So Lewis suddenly stopped walking. He turned around and looked at me. And I could see in his eyes, it was red and moist. And at that very moment, my hand slipped into my pocket, trying to grip that knife that I had been concealing all along. Was this the moment? Well, I had at least gotten faster now. You see, we'd been walking in this park for 30 minutes, and Lewis was the one always talking. He would walk, and I would walk half a step behind him. And as soon as he would turn, my hand would go in, feeling this knife. Sai sock, Thai cow, Sai sock, Thai cow. That's the only thing that was going in my head. And I wasn't sure if that was the moment to do that. But this moment was different. As he turned around, this guy, Lewis, so big, the sun shining bright right behind him, I couldn't see his face. In this deserted park, there was a big, massive bird statue, must have been an eagle, with wings stretched out, about 30 feet tall. And when I looked at Lewis, he was just covering the body of this bird, and I could just see the wings stretched out. And I looked at Lewis, and I thought, angel of death. And suddenly, I stepped back. I knew I had to do something. And I started running away. And Lewis shouted, "May God's eyes be on you. You want to make your dreams happen, don't you?" And I just didn't hear that. I just left, and I went back to my bed, and I slept. And as I slept in, I thought, how did I get here? What if this would have turned out violent? Was I supposed to survive today? How did I get here? You see, 2 days back, I was in this flight which touched down in Sao Paulo, and I was holding my seat tight with anxiety. I'd waited 2 years for my life for this time. I was finally in Brazil, the top checkpoint in my checklist, in my bucket list, in the name of adventure. And I was preparing hard for this time. And as I did, I read so much about Brazil. I learned that this is a city ridden with crime, the country ridden with crime. There's so much happening here. The backpackers getting lost. There were people getting murdered, people shot at gunpoint. And I was just ridden with fear all this while. So much so that before this trip, I took 5 months off, went to Thailand, learned Muay Thai. Sok Sai, Thai cow. Right hook, left hook, right knee. Just so that I could save myself in times like this. And as all this stuff was going on in this flight, my flight was just ready to park, I heard the sound from the back. First time in Brazil. And I looked around. Before I could say anything, "Hi, I'm Lewis. When you come to my city, I'll show you around." And I was a little surprised. Now, I don't know how many of you have seen Kings of Scotland. What's his name? Whitaker? Forrest Whitaker? That was Lewis. Dark, tall, wide eyes, expressive smile, but scary. And I just couldn't care less. So I just picked my bag and I was just about to leave. And he said, "May the God's eyes be on you." Strange. And he slipped a piece of paper in my hand. Lo and behold, 2 days later, I was in Campinas, in a local bus stop in Campinas, strangled there because the bus wouldn't move further. And this was a small town. I knew nobody. Nobody spoke English. And I started looking at my Facebook friend list, to go out surfing, couldn't find anyone, and this piece of paper slips into my hand. It says Lewis, Campinas, and his phone number. Lewis, Campinas, and his phone number. And I'm thinking, should I call or not? Finally, I mustered the courage. In the name of adventure, that was the name of my bucket list, I did call him. And he was there. He came, and as he was coming on his way here, I thought, how can I make my persona big enough, macho enough? What stories can I tell so that he knows that I can take care of myself? And we walked into that park that day that I talked about. And at one moment, I let my guard down. And he asked, "Deep, what are you doing here?" And I said, "Pursuing my dream. I want to travel and see South America, live with the people on a bike." And as I said that, I don't know what happened. I just kicked myself. I said, why did I let my guards down? I don't know this guy. It's just been few hours that I've known him. Why did I say all that stuff to him? And all this while, my hands were in my pocket, holding onto that knife. Before I knew, I was out of that place, like I said, and went back home and said, I'm not going to see this guy again. Next morning, I get a call on my phone, familiar number. Oi Deep, live your dream, don't ya? Now Lewis has a funny way of saying something. When he asks you a question, he always places the answer in between. Don't ya? He knows what he wants you to do. And I couldn't say anything. Before I could say anything, he said, let's meet for breakfast. And as I put the phone down, I had a choice. Should I go or should I just let it be? In the name of adventure, my bucket list, I said I'll go. So we were meeting in this Mercado Principal, the main market area in Sao Paulo, in Campinas. There's lots of going on, hustle and bustle. So I knew that I would be safe for a while. And we talked and we walked, but something bizarre happened. The more we walked and the more we talked, every few minutes somebody would just say, Oi Luis, como vai? Oi Luis, onde tá? And he would just smile back, wave, and walk along. 15 people, 20 people just waved at him. And it was clear, he was a drug lord. And I was in the middle of it. People knew him. And I had probably surrendered. And just as I was eating with these thoughts, Luis pointed out to this rundown building and said, Oi Deep, you want to see something interesting, don't you? He pointed to a rundown building, probably a warehouse with shattered windows, really dark. And I knew this was it. This is where I would be raped, or I would lose my stuff, or killed, I don't know, but I surrendered. And as soon as I was reading with these thoughts, two kids came and said, Luis, Luis, and they just hugged him. And Luis was so happy, ecstatic, and he hugged them back, and the mood was just changed. And I just looked at that, and Luis said, Deep, meet my family, these are my students, this is my school, here's where I teach, I wanted to show you that. I teach English and chemistry every day. And sometimes we sit down and talk about travel. I tell them travel stories. You see, Deep, you told me the story. You told me your dream. I have a dream as well. I want to travel, but I can't. I don't have money. And I have these students, and they have imagination. I tell them stories every day so that when they grow up, they travel and they write me stories. And that's how I would travel. And it all became clear why Luis called me up in that flight. It all became clear why those guys waved at him in the middle of the market. They were all his students, once upon a time. 7 days later, I find myself again in that park, just right outside. Luis and I sharing a very tight hug. And he had tears in his eyes, I could see. And I also, but I don't think he saw that. I was wearing a big helmet, and he couldn't see through that. And through the tinted glass, I saw the manifestation of my dream. Silky white Juju Honda Bros 150cc that Luis had gifted me. I hugged him tight, and I could hardly hear anything at that moment. And all he said is, Kasula, Deus seja olhos sobre você. My little brother, God always had his eyes on you. And as I turned around to look at him one last time, it was again that statue behind him, and Luis with those stretched wings, an angel. And I got this right this time, an angel of dreams. And every time I sat on the bike and traveled far, I thought, what if I had cold feet that morning and I never answered his call? What if I had cold feet that time when I never ringed him up? Would I travel so far? If I had cold feet, would I ever meet my wife in this travel? And what if I had cold feet, would I ever have a son that I have today? And what if I had cold feet, would I be here to tell the story? Thank you.